Okay, so we're now going to jump into this example right here, and we're going to be taking this precedence table and turning it into an activity network. Before we begin, let's just write down the steps that I like to follow, which I find helpful. So the first thing I like to do when I'm given a precedence table and asked to draw an activity network is, if my computer wants to work with me here, the first thing I do is I figure out where I'm starting from. So for instance, here, I know that I'm going to start right here at A because A does not have a predecessor. So let's label that as start. The second thing that I do is I figure out where I'm going to finish. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, I want to come to my activity and figure out whether or not I have any activities which are never predecessors. So for instance here, do you see how I have I? And I is never a predecessor. So that means it's going to be a finish. Also, H is never a predecessor. So this means it's going to be where I finish. G is a predecessor. And all the rest of these are in fact going to be predecessors at some point. So only H and I are going to be where I finish. The third thing I like to do is identify whether or not we have any dummy edges. Now, in some cases, you won't have dummy edges. In some cases, you will. So you need to figure out whether this is the case. The way that you figure out whether or not you have any dummy edges is by considering whether or not you have any different combos. All right, different combos. So what do I mean by that? Well, do you see here how we have C and then CG? So I've got C, C, and this is CG. So C, CG, C, CG. I have different combos. So what that means is I have a dummy edge, and I actually like to draw it into my precedence table. That means I'm going to have a line coming from C and going to the end of the G edge right there. So I like to draw that in, and that's going to help me when I come to actually draw this thing. Okay, the fourth thing that I do is, and again, this might not always happen, but just to see if there are any joined edges. And I just find it helpful just to circle them, just to remind me. So for instance, right here, E and F are going to be a place where I have E and F edges are going to join together. Once you've done all that, it's time for the fifth step, and that is to draw it. All right, let's give this a go. Let me change out my colors. Let's go red. So I'm going to start here. And I might actually draw it a bit further up. The power of technology. Let me do it there. Okay, and I know that only A comes off my start point because it's the only one without a predecessor. So I'm going to draw A. Okay, the next thing that I've got is I've got B, C, and D, all of which have A as a predecessor. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to go B, C, D. That. B, C, D. And just as I'm beginning to write this, I just remembered another very important thing. Do this in pencil, people. Pencil, pencil, pencil. You need a pencil and a rubber because more than likely, you're going to make a mistake along the way and have to rub out lines and fix them up. It's very hard to do this perfectly the first time. So sorry for that interruption, but it very much bears repeating. Okay, so hopefully you're doing this with a pencil, people. All right. So we're done with this one. We've drawn B, C, and D, all of which are coming from A. Next, we have E, which is coming off B. So here is B. I'm going to draw E off it. And as you can see, E is coming off B. So B is a predecessor to E. Nice. Next, we have C coming off F. Oh, so in other words, so we've got F and C is a predecessor of it. So here's C. I'm going to draw F. And as soon as I do that, I realize that I've made a little bit of a mistake because do you see here, E and F should be joined together. This is why we do it in rubber. We would rub that out now, and I would actually draw it so it's connecting. You need to get used to making those little mistakes. They will happen. It's very hard to do this perfectly the first time. All right, so we'll rub it out and we'll fix that up. So that's all good now. We've got E and F connected together. Next, G has D as a predecessor. Let me fix up that line a bit. So we're going to have to draw a line G from D. So we'll come here. I'm going to draw the line G. So there we go. So I've got G coming off D. Next, I have H. Now, H is a finish point, and it's emerging from E and F. So here's E and F. So I'm going to draw H, and it's going to come to my end vertex. And I know that because H is never a predecessor. So that's that done. That's that done. Okay, I now come to I. Now, we need to be careful with I, because do you see how for I have a dummy edge in play? it's telling me I need to draw a line from C to the end of G. So here is C, here is the end of G. I need to draw a dummy line there to D there. You need to do that. So remember, this dotted line here to G is telling me that I need to draw a dummy line from C to the end of the G edge right there. And your dummy line has to have direction as well, so make sure to draw in that arrow. Okay, and now I can draw in I, which is emerging from CG. So I is also a finish point. It's going to look like that. That is I. So as you can see, I is coming from C through this dummy edge right here, and also G right there. And we're done there. And we're done, people. So what did we do? We first identified the start, the finish. We identified the dummy edge by looking for different combos. We then identified any joined edges, and then we drew it. And here is our beautiful little drawing. And yeah, that's how you do it. Hopefully you found this helpful.